In 1963, CBS Network was pitched two different science fiction shows. One was Star Trek, and the other, Lost in Space. The network decided to pass on Star Trek, and Lost in Space was greenlit for the 1965 season. The show was billed as a Swiss Family Robinson, but in space. It told the tale of the Robinson family struggling to survive the depths of space after their ship, the Jupiter 2, was lost thanks to the critical computer system being destroyed by the robot B9 after it was reprogrammed by the doctor of the crew, Zachary Smith.
Sniggering cinderbox.
Although the ranking was solid, the show was canceled after its third season, with budget being the most likely reason, as it was costing about $165,000 an episode for the third season. And that's not even counting the $350,000 already spent just for the inside of the Jupiter 2. The show would go on to be a huge hit with kids in syndication, as it became more popular in reruns. Even if it was growing young fans, there was a lack of toys related to the show. Unlike Star Trek, who seemed to be slapping their names on anything, Lost in Space had very little. In the early days, most of the toys it did have was released by toy company Remco. Probably the most famous of the Remco toys was the robot, released in a few different colors. They had a Lost in Space helmet that you could also buy that came along with a Lost in Space laser pistol. There was a 3D style Lost in Space board game. And there was a non-Remco Lost in Space jet gun. But the best of them all had to be released by Mattel with their Switch and Go Lost in Space set. This thing was amazing, and it would have been a lot of fun for the time. It would be even a lot of fun today. It was kind of like a playset racetrack. In the box you had the Space Chariot. This was the go-to car for the Robinson family. It even came with a Jupiter 2 spacecraft and small plastic figures of the Lost in Space crew, even Bloop, the family pet, and they got all fit inside the Jupiter 2. And yes, it even came with a robot, and it could follow behind the chariot. There was a 45-foot flexible track that would work inside or outside, and there was also a master air control pump and air switch to control the chariot. There was only a few things released in the 70s, and by the 80s, Lost in Space was mostly forgotten in the toy section. In the 90s, a movie based on the television show would be released. Along with it would be a toy line and a classic toy line based on the television show. Sadly, those were more doll size, and we never got a good action figure line from Lost in Space. And here's a little side note fun fact. That famous opening theme music? Well, that was done by legendary composer John Williams. Yes, that John Williams. Well, that's a look at one of the coolest toys from Lost in Space, the Mattel Switch and Go. If you ever get a chance to play with it, don't turn it down. Well, I want to thank you for watching. As always, if you want to like my content, subscribe to the channel. We'll talk again soon.
Oh, the pain. The pain.
Hey, Junkman channel popping though.
Thank you, sir, for that unsolicited testimony.